Hello, everyone. I'm Susanna. Sorry. Let me ask you something. Is a fish aware of the water it swims in? Is a fish aware of the water it swims in? No, it's not. And according to one of the cultural experts, Gert Hofstede, we are no more aware of our own culture than a fish is of the water it swims in. So we are swimming around unconsciously in our own culture, quite happily, thinking that we are normal and everyone else is weird. Yeah? Now, I don't know, I was sitting at the back during the last session with Gordon, and I could see many tips coming at you, fantastic, useful tips. What are the keys now that you've learnt to motivating teams and managing performance? What's the key? Anyone? Communication, great. Okay, that's great. So that's your key, right? That's fantastic. And this afternoon, in a very short time we have available, I'm going to give you a couple of keys. One of them is that one. I'd like you to think about that we really are not very aware of the impact we're having when we're working across cultures, because everything we do is kind of unconscious and normal, and we're swimming around quite happily. So one of the keys to this is thinking a little bit more carefully about the impact we're having on other people. Yeah? That's one of the keys. And the expertise that we are bringing you in a very short time from Farnham Castle Intercultural Training it is based on three areas. First of all, it's working across cultures. It's the cultural aspect. So we're going to spend 10 minutes on that. Secondly, it's the communication aspect. So not only who are you talking to, but how are you talking to them? And you've just done a little bit of work on that. Yeah? And finally, the language aspect. Now, it's very kind of you all to be communicating with me this afternoon through the medium of the English language, but can I have a show of hands? Are you all native? Can you put your hand up if you are a native speaker of English? Thank you very much. And if you are a speaker of another language as a first language? Great. Well, thank you very much indeed for agreeing to have this session in a foreign language. We will all do our best to be clear. Yeah? Okay, so just the first little look now at this. Have a look at that. And what do you see? Sorry? Landscape. A landscape. Thank you. Someone else? A baby. A branch about to fall on someone's head. Thank you very much. Sorry? I did. JPEG artifact, exactly, yes, the technical side, yeah, indeed, yeah. So this is just to say that my lens is not necessarily your lens. We're looking through different lenses all the time, looking through different aspects. So the idea here is that many books have been produced about cultural differences and challenges, and one of the things that you're having to do as part of your role as line manager or project leader is not only to lead the teams and motivate the teams and manage the performance of the people in the teams, but it's also to do this when there is a cultural element and when there could be communication challenges and when there can be linguistic challenges. So we're going to cover all those three areas in the next 40 minutes, very briefly. But just to say that there are books on the subject called Bridging the Culture Gap, Riding the Wind, the Waves of Culture, what's the other one called? Yeah, When Cultures Collide. Yeah? So these gives the impression that there are difficulties and challenges, which there are. But before we look at these difficulties and challenges, what are the similarities? What are the things which bind us all? What are the human universals? What binds us all? Emotions, yes, all humans have emotions. Thank you. Anything else?
Body language.
Body language in some form, exactly. Expressing through non-verbal communication. Yeah? What else? Humour. Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah. Now, we have to be a little careful, as we will see later, but yeah, humour is something which is universal throughout.
Basic needs.
Yes, basic needs, food and shelter, exactly. Yeah. Conflict is another one. Yeah. Desire to defend one's position. Yeah. And that's exactly what we saw in the real play earlier. Yeah. Both parties were defending their own position. Yeah? Gossip. Yeah? There are many of them. It's a book by Donald E. Brown, and I would recommend it. One of the other things is that all humans learn to practice and perfect their skills through play. That's what you were doing up here on the stage. Yeah? So there are many of these elements that we can consider, as well as looking at the differences. Okay? So let's have a little look now at how the cultural experts define culture. Okay. Let's have a look at that first. This is the back of a T-shirt. Now, why are you laughing? You're laughing because there's some truth in it. Yeah? We are not here to stereotype, but we are here to say that the culture experts reckon about 70 to 80% of the time these tendencies are true. Yeah? And when you're working on your international projects, you must not stereotype and say, he's behaving like that because he's from Finland. Yeah? Yeah. Or that person just skipped the red traffic light because he's Italian. Yeah? We mustn't do that, but what we can do is get a little map of culture which says to us, when you're dealing with your colleagues on your international projects, be a little bit more aware of your own position and your own preferences and how well they fit in with those of your colleagues. Yeah? This is an iceberg. The things that we can see above the surface of the water are the things that we can notice that are different about the cultures. What do people notice, those of you who are visiting this culture or are not native to this culture, what did you notice? What did you see when you first arrived here?
Beers.
Sorry?
Beers.
Beer? Oh, okay. You saw the beer. Okay, good. That's nice. I like that. That's great. What else? Yes?
Lots of queuing.
Lots of queuing. Thank you. Yeah? And it's kind of, can I ask where you came from?
Belgium.
Belgium. And you don't queue in Belgium.
The French do.
The French. That's just a tendency, not a stereotype, right? What else did you notice? Sorry?
Small talk?
Small talk. What, the fact that people small talk.
No, the type of it.
The type of it. What's our favourite subject?
How are you? Thank you. I'm fine.
And that's it, and the weather.
Thank you, meaning
Exactly, yeah.
how you are.
Yes, yeah, no, that's right. And you learn, the thing is, you see, native speakers, the people in this room who have learnt your language, when they learnt your language, they didn't only learn about the grammar and the phrasal verbs and the idioms and the present perfect, they also learnt about you as a culture, right? So they have moved much more towards your direction than you have moved towards theirs. I just want to leave that thought with you. Yeah? Actually, what people notice when they say to me, as a cultural, somebody who works with other cultures and talks about culture, it's interesting that the one question people always say to me if we have a Q&A session is, Susanna, why do you not have mixer taps in your bathrooms? Yeah, this is a deeply cultural question. Why do you have a separate hot and cold tap? Now, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're not here today to talk about mixer taps, all right? The things above the surface of the water, these are the things you can Google. But they are the things that make you uncomfortable. But what makes you even more uncomfortable, the things you can't see? We've got many things here. We've got notions of beauty. We've got notions of cleanliness. You know, is that person beautiful? Have they had a shower this morning? We've got all kinds of attitudes towards children. Do you take your child to the restaurant at 10 o'clock at night? Or are they in bed at 7 o'clock? Yeah. And again, when we don't have the time to talk about these things today, so what we've done is selected a couple which are crucial to you when you're doing your business internationally, when you're negotiating, when you're leading your teams. And those three things are time, attitudes to time, yeah, and urgency. Secondly, attitude to working relationships. Yeah, one of the conversations up here was, well, you know, I'm younger than one of the people reporting to me, and that makes it difficult. Attitude to leadership and hierarchy, that's the second one. So we've got time, we've got working relationships, and we've also got attitudes to communication. Yeah? So we're going to take a very quick look at those three, okay? But of course, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we don't know, when we look at those things, we don't know whether we're talking about, you know, is this person behaving in that way because they come from the French-speaking part of Belgium? In other words, is it their national culture? Yeah? Or are they behaving in that way because they are from this kind of industry that you work in attracts a certain type of person? Yeah? I'm sure many of you would not fit into a national bank scenario. I can't imagine any of you working for a national bank. Yeah? So you've got your own industry culture. Yeah? Professional culture. Some of you are on the technical side, some of you will be on the marketing side, the sales side, the support side, the technical side. And they all have their own little departmental cultures. Yeah? Organizational culture, your own organization is very different from the competitor down the road. And there's another little circle which is not there. What does it say? Thank you, exactly. It says personal preferences. It says personal preferences. So we have to load onto all of this the fact that that person has a different family background, different family values, different education, different social situation from me. And that's why this culture thing is messy. It's not clean and easy. It's messy, but it's very interesting. So let's take a look at our first one then, which is the idea of time. I'm just going to let you read that for a second. Can you see at the back? Can you see it? Yeah. Get the idea? Yeah? So towards the left-hand side of the scale, we have something called linear time, yeah? Which is not only connected with do you arrive for meetings on time. It's not only connected with that. It's connected with things like, do you have an agenda for the meeting? Yeah? Or shall we have a little chat and some small talk? Yeah? So that's the left-hand side. The right-hand side, flexible time. Yeah, we can do several things at the same time, maybe. We can think a little bit more creatively. We can interrupt our agenda if something more urgent comes in or something more interesting comes in. Yeah. So let me ask, put your hand up if you personally would prefer to live and work, if you like, towards the left-hand side of that scale. Put your hand up. Okay, so we've got quite a few linear types, yeah? Put your hand up if you're more of a flexible time person. Yeah, okay. All right, good. Right. So linear types. Let me ask you, what do you think of those guys over there who kind of do stuff, sort of multitasking, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, go and speak to a friend, pick up the phone, do a bit of that, have a biscuit. What do you think of them? What do you think of them and the way they work? Come on, say it. Jealous. Oh, you're jealous. That wasn't what I was expecting. Yeah.
I like to work with them because if you're a linear person, they can be a bit more opportunistic.
Okay, so they can be more opportunistic and a little bit more creative, yes. Yeah, great. Lovely. Anything negative? Annoying. Yeah. Why are they annoying?
It just disrupts your linear approach.
Disrupts your linear approach. Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay. Yes, disrupts your linear approach, and also a little bit chaotic, actually, yes? Yeah. Not very efficient. I mean, to be productive, we need to be on the left side, don't we? All right. Now, think about, tell me, just give me a snapshot. Which are the countries that you're working with? So give me a couple of projects that you're working with. Where are they? Ireland, okay. Spanish client? Russia? Saudi Arabia? Greece? Great, okay. Let's have a look and see where they're... Just think for a moment about where you feel their preference is compared to yours on this scale, yeah? Here we go. No surprises, you're nodding. You're nodding as if you've experienced it, yeah? Okay, yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I was working with some people who fit very, very squarely into the left-hand, towards the left-hand side of the slide. And we were doing this exercise, and I said, well, so any observations? And this guy put his hand up. I'm not going to give you his nationality. He put his hand up, and he said, yes, it's perfectly simple. The people, the countries, the nationalities, the cultures on the left-hand side are more successful than the countries on the right. It's interesting, isn't it? You know, we don't have time to go into that. It's clearly not the case, all right? So the view from this side tends to be that the cultures over that side are wasting time, inefficient, chaotic. Yeah, and okay, yes, they're creative as well, but you know, we are paid to produce, so we have to hurry up. Okay, what about those cultures on the right then? Do they look at the cultures on the left and think, oh, I wish I was like Switzerland? Seriously, do you think they do? No. In some aspects, actually, because many of the other cultures have been schooled in a Western school, yeah? Whether that's a university or a college, some kind of tertiary education, which tends to encourage that kind of linear thinking. So in some aspects, yes, but in other aspects, no, because both parties are looking at each other thinking, you're inefficient. They're thinking, you're inefficient, you guys on the left, because you only do one thing at a time, and everything's quite rigid and sticking to a timetable. Huh? And the other side's thinking, you guys are inefficient because you're chaotic. All right, so this is just a little quick message for you about thinking about what you can do to meet in the middle, and recognizing, first of all, that your way is not necessarily the best way, and what positive things can you get out of a personal preference or a cultural background which lives and works a little bit more towards the right. Yeah? Okay, let's move on now. I'd like to move on and think a little bit about authority and attitudes to authority. Okay, what's the preference in this room then? Hands up those of you who think that everyone should contribute, have a chance to contribute at a meeting. Yeah, that's pretty much like, looks like 80%. Okay? All right. So what do you think about being in a meeting? Do you ever go to meetings where there are several people maybe it's a conference call or physical meeting where there are several people at the meeting, but only one person speaking? Does that happen sometimes? Yeah. And what's going through your mind, lady? You nodded. What goes through your mind then? Yeah. Sorry, I think it was the lady behind you. Yeah, either of you, I don't mind. That's fine, anyone. Me, it's anyone, yeah.
It's frustrating.
Yes, yeah, okay. Frustrating.
I don't know, because I've kind of been a bit two sides. Like, sometimes I've been in scenarios where it's like overly diplomatic. So you get to the end of the meeting and you need some feedback. And in some cultures, it's like this, you've got to go around the table and every person gets to say their little bit and they only focus on the bit that they care about. And then you go to other ones where no one's allowed to speak. And it's like this dictatorship response that
Yes.
just comes from one person.
Yes.
But I've kind of seen it on two extremes, and you can almost see the disadvantages.
Of both, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. And that's a great sort of learning for you, isn't it, about having to adapt to the different styles and recognizing that they're there. Yeah, absolutely. We don't have all the cultures listed, of course, but... I mean, there are many meanings of this, or interpretations, but one of the aspects we can think about is you as a leader of a project, or you as a line manager, yes? If you are leading a group of people who believe that the senior person should dominate in a meeting, or who believe that the senior person should have the dominant authoritative role, yeah? And your preference is for an all-inclusive, let everybody say their piece, can you see where that might cause some disruption or some misunderstanding? So I come from one of these cultures. I'm expecting to work for a boss or a line manager who dominates, especially in meetings, and who tells me what to do, gives me instructions. And you come from a background, a culture where everyone should have a voice. It's democratic, it's consensus-driven, yeah? The messages, and I don't need to spell the messages out for you, but it's something that you really need to think about. Yeah, I think the next slide gives another little indication of that. So it's thinking about what impact do you want to have as a leader of a team, yeah, and what is your team expecting from you? Yeah? Who's this guy? What do you think his job is? He's what? Okay. His job is not that. He looks too clean, does he? This happened to me when I went to work to run a conference, and the door was opened by somebody very similar, the cleaner, I assumed, yeah, because he was carrying the tools of the cleaner, and he let me into the conference room and left me to set up. And then when the meeting started, exactly on time, everyone was in the room 10 minutes early. We're going to tell you the culture in a moment. And then I was just about to start, and the cleaner walked in and sat down. And I found this a little bit strange. Yeah? This was a course on international negotiating. I didn't really understand. Anyway, this was Sweden. And it wasn't the cleaner. I learned through hints and suggestions. It was the managing director. Yeah? And fortunately, I hadn't gone to the back of the room and said, excuse me, there seems to be some dust that needs dealing with. So, this is the cultural message from that leader is, I am not going to be a nail which sticks up. Yeah? The nail which sticks up will be hammered down. I am going to be the same as the team. I'm going to be democratic. This is going to be a consensus-driven organisation, to the point where I want to demonstrate this by doing menial tasks like sweeping up the things from the floor and dressing in a t-shirt and jeans. Yeah? Now that's great if the team expect it and if it fits in with the team. All right, so the message is there for you. What are the team's expectations from you? Is there something you can do to impose your authority a little bit more? Is it something to do with the way you dress? Is it something to do with the way you give instructions? Yeah? Native speakers, we'll look at this in a moment, but native speakers might be tempted to give an instruction like this. Sorry to bother you, but if you're not too busy, do you think you could get that to me by tomorrow afternoon? Yeah? What does that actually mean? Is that an instruction? I mean, it sounds like one to me, because I'm from that culture. But from somebody from another culture, what does it sound like? But yeah, it's kind of do it if you feel like it, right? Right. So, yeah, so be careful, please, be careful. Here we go. Looking the part, yeah? I don't need to say much more except the gentleman on the left is the president of Bulgaria, yeah? Gentleman on the right, we probably all know, Boris Johnson, cultivating the concept of the eccentric, humorous, light-hearted politician. Gentleman on the left, cultivating the image of the professional, serious leader. Yeah? I'm not going to ask you which one you prefer, but when I was working in Bulgaria, and I asked them what they thought about the chap on the right. At the time, he was the foreign secretary. They said they couldn't understand it. Why is he behaving in such an unprofessional way? Oh, okay. All right, let's move on to professional relationships now. And I'd just like to ask you where you are again on this scale. Do you prefer to get the job done? And then maybe later we'll go out for a beer or a cup of tea or whatever. Or do you prefer to get to know the person first? Spend some time with them, find out about their family, find out about their background, get to know them so that you can trust them and help them a bit better. Hands up if your tendency is more to the left. Yeah, got about sort of a third of the room, I suppose. And the other side, over to the right. Yeah, some of you don't know. Yeah? It's funny, the UK, if you're from the UK tends to be in the middle for a lot of these things. Yeah? Okay. All right, let's have a look. What does this mean to you? This means that if you're doing business with people who have a strong need to develop trust with you before they do business with you, and your tendency is to say, right, what's the job? Let's get on with it. Oh, by the way, what's the weather like today? Yeah? And how are you? Then you will find that because the trust hasn't been developed, the job isn't going to be done very well. Yeah? Are some of you working locally or remotely? Are you working remotely, some of you, on these projects or locally with your clients and so on? Both? Hands up remotely. You seem to have been reduced to silence. Okay. Hands up co-located physically. All right, some of them. This is much more difficult when you're not able to see the person and shake hands with the person. Yeah? If you're communicating through calls and conference calls, then we tend to move to the functional side much more. Yeah? You might say, hi, how are you, what's the weather like over there, and then move on. But remember, please, that the people you're working with, your clients, your team, the people who are working with you on your projects, many of them have a strong need to develop this personal touch. To develop this personal touch. You can see Taiwan over to the right there. Yeah? A Taiwanese colleague of mine, when she arrived in this country 15 years ago, I said to her, what was the most shocking thing for you when you arrived here? Thinking she would say, what about the mixer taps? But she didn't. She said the most shocking thing was her first day at work in an office on the outskirts of Basingstoke. I don't know if you've been to Basingstoke, and the outskirts of it is not very beautiful. Anyway, the people were friendly, and they showed her everything she needed to know, and then they gave her the very, very useful information. The sandwich man comes in his van at 10:30. And she was very offended. Any idea why? I mean, I would find that useful, right? Yeah, really, because you get filled with panic if you don't know where you're going to get your next little bit of food. But she was very offended, yes? Oh, you put your hand up?
I don't know why.
Yeah?
She was expecting maybe to go for dinner or lunch or whatever with her colleagues first. Exactly, yeah? And in fact, when I was working in Taiwan a couple of years ago, it's exactly what happened to me. Lunch, dinner every evening, weekends, let me show you the city. Fantastic. Willingness to help. Now, that might not be your preference. You might say, no, I prefer to sit on my own at lunchtime and eat my sandwich. This is my work-life balance, and I have a right to do this. Okay? You're not going to get very far if that's your attitude. Okay? So think, please, about, is there any... and then this questionnaire, because when we're running 1-day or 2-day programs, we ask participants to fill in a questionnaire before the course. And this guy, who was the marketing director of this software company doing business with Taiwan, he wrote on his questionnaire, where the question was, is there anything you would particularly like to focus on? He wrote, yes, do I have to have lunch with my Taiwanese colleagues every day? Yeah? Okay, yes. I'm going to skip that, and I'm just going to move on to this one, which I think is something interesting for you. Do they work well in teams? Any surprises there? No, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you've had some training on teamwork, haven't you? Team building, probably. Yeah. You've read about team building. You've maybe been on a team building course. Yeah. So, where are you on that scale? And what about the people you're working with? Some cultures would think that the idea of a team building course is laughable, because the team idea, concept comes so naturally. Yeah. So again, think very carefully about what you can do to make sure that the people in your team are getting their own need satisfied. Yeah? Communication. So we're moving on now to this idea of, I gave you an example earlier, which is, sorry to bother you, but if you've got a minute, would you mind giving me that report by the end of tomorrow? Yeah? So the British culture, the UK culture, would probably sit somewhere in the middle. Yeah? Okay. Think about your own tendency and preference, and here they come now. Sorry. We don't have all the cultures there. Think about your own tendency and preference, and what effect it's having on the people that you're communicating with. when you're giving feedback on performance, yeah, when you're managing performance, how are you going to deliver it? Are you going to say, I'm not happy with your performance. We need to improve it. So please do so. Thank you. Goodbye. Yeah? What about over here? Yeah. Actually, it's a good story. Again, actually, it was in Taiwan. I was thinking about this. And also, I was thinking about when I was in Germany, and I brought this was last year, my lovely little 10-year-old laptop, which is now dead. But I took it to the IT, the conference room, and I couldn't connect it, so the IT guy came to help me. Yeah? And he picked up my laptop, looked at it, threw it down on the table and said, which century are you in? Yeah? All right. Look where he is, yes? Direct negative feedback, okay? How would somebody, we've got the UK over to the right. How would somebody from the UK give feedback? What would they say? We would find that quite brutal. Yeah? We would say, I see you have a museum piece. We would probably use irony or sarcasm. Yeah? All right. And then I was thinking back to this Taiwanese colleague when she wanted to give me some feedback about the method of my chopstick management. I was trying to eat with chopsticks and I was not doing very well. And she gave me some feedback about my chopstick use. Yeah, she didn't say, as indeed somebody from the Netherlands or Germany might say, Susanna, you are using your chopsticks incorrectly. Yeah, because that would be direct and clear. Yeah. What she said was, Susanna, I can see you are very good with chopsticks. Yes, yes, yes. Would you like a fork? Isn't that sweet, though? Isn't that sweet? So when you're giving your feedback, when you're delivering your performance feedback to your team member, adapt your style a little bit, okay, in order to think about the situation. Are you going to do it privately? Are you going to do it in the group? Yeah, think about that. And here's an example of direct or indirect communication. You can see the difference, yeah? My suggestion to you would be always try for simplicity and clarity. Don't try to hide your message in a lot of words because it will get lost, yeah? Here is a little exercise for you, a translation exercise. Now, it says on the left, the Brit says, but actually this could be a range of native speakers saying this, but it's particularly clear coming from a Brit. So the first one, with all due respect. What does the native speaker really mean when they say that? Yeah. Oops. I tried to... Sorry, I don't know how to click onto that. I'll just tell you. It says, yes, it says, actually what it means is, you're wrong. Yeah? And the third column, what can some non-native speakers think it means? Huh? Yes, I am respecting you. Yeah? Because the focus is on the word respect. Yeah? And the underlying meaning is not there. Second one, oh, by the way, so we're having a meeting. And you see, some people are, and one person is just about to leave the room, okay? And before the person leaves, I say, oh, by the way, what do I really want to do? Yes, this is the most important thing, but I don't have the courage to say it. Yeah? I didn't have the courage to say it at the meeting, so I'm just sliding it in as though it's something minor. And the other person is going to think, okay, let me think about the language here. This is the way, this is by the way, so logically it means something very small, yeah?
Okay. I was a little disappointed. This came up, didn't it? In your exercise with Gordon, yeah? Yeah? He said, think about, are you going to say, I'm disappointed, or I'm upset, I'm disappointed. And we often hear, if you see mothers with kids in this country, mummy's very disappointed, darling. Yeah? What does it really mean? Come on? Furious. Yes, I'm furious, I'm upset, and I'm angry. Yeah? Okay. What message does the other person take from it? No, it's not that important, yeah? And actually, I was doing this exercise with one of the merchandisers, the clothing buyers from Asda, which is a big supermarket store, which have a clothing wing called George, right? And they buy a lot of their fabric in from China, mainland China. And this woman said, now I understand why my supplier doesn't answer my emails. And I said, well, why? What? And she said, well, I write to him, Dear Mr. Cheng, I'm a little disappointed with the quality of the fabric. Yeah? And so he reads it and he thinks, okay then, no problem. Yeah? Could you consider some other options?
We need to find a different way.
Yeah, why? Because that option is rubbish. Yeah, exactly, thank you, yes, yeah. And what might the other person think it means? Yeah, let's just have a little brainstorming, yeah? Okay. This is getting very confusing, isn't it? Did you have any idea, native speakers, that you were being so confusing to the non-native speakers? Non-native speakers, hands up if you have suffered because of this. Yeah, look at this, okay? Thank you. Because suffered as a native speaker as well, exactly, absolutely, thank you. Yeah. That's an original point of view. Yeah. Your idea is stupid. Okay. All right. So I think the message there is, if you have something to say it simply, say it clearly. Don't be brutal, but say it simply and clearly. And if you want to soften it a little bit, soften it with a little signpost, a little indicator, a little cushion. Yeah? Can I give you a little feedback? I don't like it. Okay? I think that's a bit clearer than, well, I think we'd like to look at some other options because I'm a little bit disappointed with the one you've come up with so far, and if you've got a little bit of time, it would be great. No. Okay. All right. I'm just going to move on now. Yes. Okay. I wanted to bring these up, actually, but it doesn't work on this slide. Just have a look at those, please, for me. Now, when you read those, non-native speakers, when you read the red one, if you analyse it and think about it enough, you get it, right? Yes? Okay. Many of you, if you heard that in the middle of a meeting, the red one, it would probably stop you and you would take a couple of seconds to think about the meaning. Correct? Yes. Okay. Native speakers, you can see the difference, but that there is a difference between the red and the green one. Yeah? Can you tell me why you tend to use the red one? Or should I say, we tend to use the red one? Sorry? To try and be more friendly? Yes. Why is it friendlier to say 6 of one and half a dozen of the other? It's interesting, isn't it? But you're right, but it's interesting. Yeah. So we do it to try and be friendly. What else?
It's less formal.
It's less formal. Good. What's wrong with being formal? Back to you, it's unfriendly. Yeah. So the management leadership professional language that many of you are familiar with is the red one. Yeah? When I asked a UK guy who works for a reinsurance company in the city,
dealing with international clients, I said to him, you can see the difference between the red and the green one. You can see that the green one is clear, it's simple, it's easy to understand. And he said, yes, 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 yes. So I said, well, why do you continue to use the red one then? And do you know what he said? Because it's more fun and the green one is boring. Okay, so native speakers in the room, please, can I ask you to think very carefully about delivering your message, as Gordon said, slowly and clearly, but also to be a little more sensitive to the challenges presented by your difficult language. Yeah? If we had more time together, I would use some live examples from the room to illustrate the difficulties, the challenges that you're giving. But seriously, I had a guy saying to me just last week, saying to me from a German organization, Susanna, when I'm in a meeting with native speakers, I think they are deliberately trying to exclude me from the conversation by talking in this type of red language. Yeah? And this is one of the biggest changes that you can make. Now, it's not just your responsibility. Non-native speakers, what can you do to improve the situation? When you're in a meeting, if you're in a meeting with someone and they're doing this red language stuff, what do you do? Sorry? You ask them what they mean, exactly, but you know, in the middle of a 1 hour meeting, if this happens 50 times, it's difficult for you, isn't it? Yeah? To say, what, yeah? It's a challenge, but I think that's that you can do. One other thing you can do is to summarize your own understanding. Yeah? Can I just stop and summarize what you have just said so that I know that I'm clear? Great. Anything more? And the native speaker might say, yeah, stop me if I'm speaking too quickly. Okay, you can't do that, native speaker. You just stop speaking quickly. Yeah. So the message is very simple. Just be a little more sensitive to the needs. Non-native speakers take control and do a little bit more work to assert yourself in the meetings. Now, I'm looking at my watch, and I don't know how we are for time, but we still have a little bit. Okay. So I'm coming to the end of what has been a very, very high-level, light-hearted look at some very serious areas for you, which are the areas that you're dealing with in terms of time, business relationships, working relationships, managing meetings, leading teams, in terms of culture. In terms of communication, saying things simply and clearly and making sure that your message is understood. And in terms of language, using a global, easy-to-understand English that everyone can understand. So that's really the message for you. And the summary and the key point is, remember that you, the fish in the water, it's not necessarily your own lens, your own water, which is normal, okay? Take a little bit more time to adapt your own style to the other person, yeah? Now, that's a very general conclusion, and we've left many, many issues in the air. Are there any questions? Any comments, any ideas, anything you want to ask at this point?
What do you think of sarcasm?
I love it.
Would you say it's appropriate though? Or?
No, you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful. Yeah, I catch myself. I was working in Germany yesterday with an international team, and it's still my approach to relax people, to avoid conflict, to try to show respect, and to get on a friendly level. But some people can find it quite offensive. Yeah. Yes.
How have you dealt with in the past with cultures which take sort of arguing as part of the course? We were told on a recent client call that we should all be arguing. It's really healthy if we're all arguing, which was just really, for an English person, it's very difficult to actually engage with.
Yes. And which national, who told you this?
Well, I've actually had it twice, once in Israel and once in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, okay. So what's the meaning behind that? That's a good question. What do you think the meaning is behind? You must argue. What's the meaning behind the request? Passion. Yes, you are, the message is, thank you, you are lacking in passion. Yeah? You seem unemotional, you don't seem very interested, I can't see any kind of emotion coming out from you. What you're doing is being professional, yeah? But that actually is masking your emotion and your passion for it. So what can you do? You can't change personalities, but you can inject a little bit more passion into your language, yeah? And remember that the non-native speaker is listening out for clues and indications in your voice tone. Yeah? Thank you very much for all the hard work that you have put in on the project. I really appreciate it. Yeah? Now, if I read that in an email, that would be fine. If I hear it, especially on the phone when I can't see you, you sound flat. Yeah? You don't sound as if you mean it. So I would say put more effort into that. Thank you very much for all the hard work you put in on the project. I really appreciated it. Yeah, and that's the way you can show your passion. Okay, practice in front of the mirror. Okay, all right. One last question.
Could I ask one if no one else wants to? Sorry, Susanna.
Yeah.
How do you, obviously quite a few people in the room are in a position now where they're starting to lead either small teams and maybe working towards leading a project team, including clients. If you're in a situation where there are different cultures within a team and those individuals haven't been to this training session, can you what can the team leader do to kind of broker that understanding if they can't, they're not necessarily in control of all the different players? Is there a role that can be played in kind of brokering and understanding?
So when you say broker, you mean trying to, I'm just translating what you say there into global English. You mean kind of try to negotiate a good way forward.
Well, I guess if you can't necessarily influence how everyone behaves with each other directly, or you can't, explain that this person has different cultural understandings to this person, what role can a team leader play to ensure that everyone does understand each other?
Yeah, so from an understanding point of view, I think we need to, and from culturally and communication-wise, what you can do at the beginning of the project is get some kind of little team charter or team agreement, which says that if we are in a meeting and something is said which is not understood, it is perfectly okay to say, sorry, or you have an agreement. So I think the answer is to have an open agreement at the beginning of the project. You can set the rules and the regulations in terms of managing time, in terms of working relationships, in terms of the way you communicate. And if you don't do that, then it's very difficult to pick it up later. Does that kind of answer it? Yeah, okay.
I think we've got time for one last question, if anyone else has a question.
I guess from a UK point of view, the risk is if you try and speak too plainly, you might think you're sounding patronising. And it's how to get that balance right.
Yeah. Yes. That's a good point. I think that is something which is a perception that only you would feel in that situation, because the people you're talking to would not have the facility to recognize that you were sounding patronizing. I think they would just really appreciate, in my experience, really appreciate the fact that you were speaking slowly and clearly. Yeah? The patronizing thing is connected with a sort of almost what you would call a kind of parent-child tone. Yeah? And I think that's quite difficult to pick up anyway. Yeah? And all you're trying to do, actually, is just simplify, 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 which goes against the UK core values of, one of them, which is not wanting to kind of put yourself forward. So if you make a point, you kind of mumble it in a sort of way, excuse me, can I just add something to that? Yeah? You don't want to say, excuse me, could I add a point to the agenda? Because somebody might think, if I said that, you might think, who does she think she is? Yeah? Huh? So I think that's an internal UK problem. I don't think that your non-native colleagues would identify it as patronising at all. I think they would just appreciate it as being clear. Yeah. I mean, you've got to try, you have to experiment, yeah, and find your tone. Good.
Thank you so much, Susanna.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Pleasure. Thanks.